Hey, what's up, knitters? This is Jana with Purl Together, and I am back with block number 6 of our Afghan knit along. Now, the pattern that we're using is linked down below. It's Norah's Vintage Afghan. We've been doing 1 block a month, and we'll continue to do this for the entire 20 block series. So what's happening today is block number 6. This was a pretty easy, pretty straightforward block. I really enjoyed it. It was a little less tedious than the bobbles that occurred in block number 5. So I like how things are kind of switched up, and we have some that are kind of a little bit easier and some that are a little more challenging. So I've been enjoying that quite a bit. The yarn I'm using is Madeline Tosh Vintage, and I've really been loving this yarn. Totally loving it. So I'll definitely be reordering certain colors to make other stuff. I've really enjoyed that a lot. The other thing I want to mention real quick before I get started is that these videos are brought to you each and every week by our patrons. Now, these are people that have chosen to pledge a small amount every month to Purl Together to keep these videos coming in trade for some perks like patron-only knit night, early release videos, and some other things like that that I'm offering depending on their level of support. So if you're interested in becoming a patron, I'd certainly appreciate that. You can check out the details at www.patreon.com/Purl Together. All right, let's get started. Good. So you can see that I have this lovely tonal gray, dark gray. This is the Madeline Tosh that I've linked down in the description. Madeline Tosh worsted, vintage worsted, I believe it's called. And this is the composition book colorway, which has some really good variegation. I'm loving this. I just love how that looks. Anyway, but I needed to lighten up the background a little bit, so I have this like rustic background for you this time. So the first 9 rows we've done same as we have with the previous 5 blocks with the 4 rows of garter stitch, and then we have row 5, which is knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 all the way across, and then 4 more rows of garter stitch. So now we are ready to go ahead with the increase row on the right side. So we knit 1, make 1 twice. And I'll show you real quick how I do the make one, as I've done in the previous videos. So I just go in, knit the first one, and when I make one, I'm just doing a lifted bar increase where I go in from the front with the left-hand needle, and then I knit into the back of that to close any gaps. So knit 1, make 1 twice. Then we're just going to continue across as indicated by knit 2, make 1 26 times. And then at the end, you will have knit 1, make 1 twice. So I'm just going to go knit 2, make 1 26 times, or until I just have two stitches left. And then at the end, you do the knit 1, make 1, knit 1, make 1, knit 1. So I'm going to do it till I have 3 stitches left. That's my mistake. I misspoke a moment ago. So knit 2, make 1 all the way across until you have 3 stitches left, which, if you've counted right, will be 26 times. I finished the increase row, and I do have the required 87 stitches. I double counted. I always double count my cast on, as well as whenever I do anything, to increase the number of stitches dramatically in this way. You'll want to make sure so that you come out right on your chart. Now, just a few things I want to mention about chart number 6 and the chart notes is we are beginning the chart as indicated in the instructions on the wrong side row. So what that means is you're going to start over here on row 1, and you're going to work the opposite direction as you normally would, as if like when you knit in the round, and you're going to start over here on the left side and work across this way. Then you're going to go up 1, and then on the even numbered rows is when the cables are performed, and you'll work your chart like normal from right to left across. So just be mindful of all your instructions, just as we have been before. So these first rows are pretty straightforward. It's just knits and purls going from left to right. Knits and purls with that little kind of ribbony icon, which means if you're on the wrong side, as we will be to start, that's purl 1 through the back loop, and then it's knit 1 through the back loop if you're on the right side. So I'll show you that, and then I'll show you these 2 cables, and then I'll be going to go ahead and work through at least 1 or 2 chart repeats, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so I'll knit through this a little bit and show you what these symbols are going to look like. I'm going to choose to cable them without a cable needle since they're just 2/2s. All right, beginning row 1 on the wrong side, we knit 2. Okay, so when we purl through the back loop, we go into the back of the stitch and then purl like normal. All right, then we're going to knit 1, purl 2, and carry on across, just being mindful of your knits and purls that are opposite on the wrong side. And then I'll show you the purl through the back loop one more time. Bring your needle or your yarn to the front, go into the back of that stitch, and purl like you normally would, taking your yarn to the back to continue on with your chart. At the beginning of row 2, you have a knit and a purl to create that slight garter stitch edging on the first stitch column going up. And then you knit through the back loop, which is just as you think it would be. So instead of going into the front of the stitch this way, you would knit into the middle going into the back loop. So that's really simple. Then we have a purl, and then we have our first cable, which is that blue icon. All right, and that says slip 2 stitches to the cable needle and hold in front. If you're using a cable needle, just go ahead and do that. Then you're going to knit 2 and knit 2 from the cable needle. Now, I don't use a cable needle generally for just 2 over 2 stitches, so I would go in behind these first 2 stitches, and then I'm going to grab the next 2, if you can see that. I'm going to pinch these first 2 off below the loops and sneak my left needle around and put them back on the left needle. So that's simulating holding those 2 to the front and taking them across the front and switching places with those. Then I'm going to replace these 2 stitches back on the left needle and just knit across them because there's no purls involved in this 2 over 2 cable. All right, then just carry on with your knits and purls across to the green 2 over 2 cable, and I'll show you that. All right, I'm still on row 2, and I have just come to the first 2 over 2 cable to the right where that green icon is. And if you're using a cable needle, simply slip these 2 off and hold those stitches to the back and then knit the next 2. But since I'm not using a cable needle, I'm going to go in under these 2 stitches, pinch these 2 at the base. I'm just pinching them firmly against my right hand needle while I take my left needle around, putting them back through those loops and then pulling the 2 stitches to the right, across the front to the right. Replace those 2 back on the left needle and just knit across them. So you've just traded places with those 2 sets of stitches, and that one I've apparently split when I did it, so we're going to be careful to repair that. There we go. And now you can see that those are pulled across the face of the knitting across those 2 that are purled. Okay, then just carry on and being very mindful of your knits and purls and knit through the back loop. One thing I noticed that I want to point out to you, when you're going across here, it's really easy to lose your place. But one thing I noticed is that you have 2 purls here, and this, if you look at this little column, it alternates purl, knit, if you're viewing it from the right side. Then you have this column that goes up that's going to be more defined because all those stitches are knit through the back loop. Then you'll have this other little kind of garter ridge that goes up, and then again a more defined column. So if you just kind of be aware of those patterns, then it makes it easier to read your knitting. Now let me talk for a second about this line right here. So it's important to read your chart notes. So you're going to work rows 1 through 11 and then repeat row 12 to 21 6 times. So this is the base of the square. We're only going to knit through this section once at the bottom of the square, and then we're just going to repeat these rows over and over and over, recommended 6 times. Okay, so you're only knitting through this bottom section once, and then you're going to repeat just these top rows 6 times in total. All right, I'm ready to do the decreasing row where we decrease from 87 stitches, I think it was, back down to our original cast on number. I really liked knitting this block. It's yeah, it went really quickly with just the knit stitches between the 2x2 cables, and I really like how these chevrons look with kind of this column that appeared going up the center. So I found that to be really enjoyable, and it was a quick one actually too. All right, I'm doing the decrease row now, which is just knit 2 together, knit 2 together, knit 1, knit 2 together, knit 1, knit 2 together all the way across until you get to the end in the last 2 stitches, and then knit those 2 together. I'm doing that from memory, so double check that I'm correct, but we're just need to get back down to our original cast on number of 57. So when I'm done with this sequence, I'll double check that that count is correct, and then we're just going to re-knit the first 9 rows, those 4 rows of garter stitches, and then knit 1, purl 1 row, and 4 more rows of garter stitch and then the bind off. So I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. Okay, I finished with the garter stitch, 4 rows of garter stitch, then row 5 was the knit 1, purl 1 alternating row all the way across, and 4 more rows of garter stitch. So now we're ready to bind off knitwise, meaning we're just going to go in this first stitch as if to knit, go ahead and knit that one, and I always pull up a little extra because I want this bind off to be relatively loose and stretchy, and then knit the next one. Again, I pull up a little extra yarn to make it loose and stretchy, and then pull that first stitch right up over the next. And you're just going to continue that all the way across the top, pulling the first stitch over the second. Alternatively, you can choose to use a larger needle to bind off with, and if you want to do that, you would just use a larger needle, you know, maybe a size or 2 up in your right hand so that the loops you're creating are a little bit bigger. I haven't really had too much problem just binding off loosely, but some people definitely do, and you don't want to bind off tightly and have it be puckered. So you might want to experiment with that and see what works best for you. As always, you're the boss. All right, as you can see, that made a nice edge right there. So on the last one, all you need to do is cut the yarn, and then go ahead and pull that tail through. All right, let's go and block it. And there it is. I really like how this block turned out. I really like the variegation of the color. I really like how this turned out. I mean, it is much darker down here than it is here, but I just think that lends it character. I really am enjoying knitting with this particular yarn. All of the blocks of this yarn has just been a joy to knit with. So check that out if you haven't tried the Madeline Tosh Vintage yet. I'm going to add a few more pins through the center section just to keep the ornery cats from, doing this and lounging on it. All right, good luck with block number 6. As always, if you have any questions, write a comment down below. Join us in the Facebook or Ravelry group. I'm always happy to answer your questions there. And if you're interested in becoming a patron, check out what I'm offering over there by clicking the link down below. All right, thanks for watching.